So today's guest lives and breathes strategic accounting and finance. Her passion for helping innovative founders scale their finance function is unmatched in the market, at least from what I found. And I'm lucky enough to live and work in the same city as her here in Tampa. In today's conversation, we'll take a deep dive into how learning to say no, nailing your niche, and immersing yourself in a number of spiritual topics can allow you to grow yourself, just as she has, her team and her business, all the way to the Inc. 5000 list 3 years in a row. Founder and CEO of CFO Alliance, Brooke Evans, welcome to The Dirt.
I already knew this was going to be fun, but wow, that was fun to listen to you say.
Well, it's fun to be partnered with you. So, I obviously hit on a few things there, but you and I have known each other for a while, helped some of the same partners and clients. But what did I miss in my intro that you really want listeners to know?
And I think you summed up a lot in a really exquisite way. But I think, it sounds cliche, but it is so lonely at the top. But yet, as founders, we all have a unique yet similar journey. And so I love that you're hosting this podcast to try to excavate some of that from us so we can all hear common themes and realize that we're not really alone. I know founders really love to connect with one another. And so anything that I can share today that is useful for someone else in their journey, I'm super happy to do it.
So let's start with the basics of kind of how CFO Alliance came to be. What's the background that led to the success that now is CFO Alliance?
Yeah, I wish it was some magical story, but and it's interesting too, because I think being a founder, like we're all, not all, but many of us probably are type A, right? We're really driven and we like to drive things forward, but yet sometimes it's in those softer moments when there are coincidences and serendipity, really, that it makes your life path clear. And so a little bit of that yin and yang, and so that both of those elements were really important, how CFO Alliance was born. So I had been for many, many years watching in the periphery founders start and grow businesses in Tampa. And I didn't realize like how much attention I was giving this or how much I admired these founders, but I just always thought, man, it's so cool what they're doing. And I would watch and just kind of quietly admire. But at the time I was in a really traditional career path. So I'm still a recovering auditor, spent many years in public accounting, too many, but had a great experience doing it. And so eventually my intuition led me to realize like I was not built to be in public accounting. I don't have a compliant bone in my body. And so when I was pregnant with my second child, I knew that I was about to be put on the partner track and I knew I had to leave. I could not stay and audit for a lifetime. And so I had never looked for a job outside of public accounting, hadn't even considered it when all the recruiters were calling. But I ended up discovering this like inaugural finance leader position, first CFO position at an entrepreneurial company, and thought, well, let me interview for that. So I was 8 months pregnant with my second kid and started that interview process, which lasted about 3 weeks. And I did get that job and I got an offer on a Friday afternoon. And the following Monday, I was trying to resign. But in between my 2 partner meetings, I ended up going into labor. So that was kind of fun. But I did leave public accounting and I worked for those entrepreneurs. And it really just enlightened in me, this love for entrepreneurs that I have. And I had read a magazine about a woman who had started a business like this. This is where coincidence comes in. So all these things are happening at the same time. Tony DiBenedetto would call them sliding door moments. And so I read this magazine article and a woman had started a business like this. And I thought, well, gosh, if she could do that, maybe I could do that. And then working for entrepreneurs, I was, inspired. And I just thought, well, gosh, if there's 2 things that are true about me, one is I am a client service person through and through. So even though audit didn't fit for me, serving clients did, and then having this admiration for founders. So I just decided that I really wanted to come start this. And I thought that I had all this toolkit of accounting and finance knowledge. It would be easy to acquire clients. And that was my first rude awakening on the journey of entrepreneurship. I had no idea how to sell anything. So.
I mean, that's the dirt. So let's hit on that, right? You mentioned some obstacles that stood in the way when you were getting started. What any in particular that you think are pretty common with the founders you run into?
I don't know if any of them are common or if they're unique. I mean, I was very naive about what it takes to sell, right? And what it takes to acquire new customers.
Mhm.
And, I don't know if other founders are naive like I was, but I do think we have a tendency to overdo our expectations, right? And model out some sales predictions that maybe aren't realistic. So that's probably common. But for me, I just really had no clue what it meant to acquire customers. And I started the firm with $50,000 in the bank. So I was the primary income earner at the time. I had a 2-year-old and like a 7-month-old. And I started this firm and it took me 4 months, no clients, completely dry, networking like crazy, not winning deals, getting prospects, but losing them. I mean, there were definitely some tears, right? Come to the close to the end of that 4-month period, but then landed a client and got really lucky with that first win. It carried us for a while.
That
Carried
first,
me for a while.
that first win was Tribridge, right?
It was not. That first one
Oh,
was actually Walter Energy. It was a public company, so it was not founder led, but it sure paid the bills. And Walter Energy, so that's another thing in the early years. I used we a lot. Sound like a bigger firm, so I don't know
yeah.
how many founders do that, but anyway, yeah, Walter Energy hired me and paid the bills, lots of nice projects. Over the years, they kept calling me back. And so it was a nice way to have some cash flow to be able to invest in the kind of work that we wanted to be doing with founders.
Yeah, that's great. And that was in what year?
2008. Oh yeah, so that wasn't the only challenge. The other challenges and obstacles in 2008. We
Hmm.
weren't in a recession yet when I started the firm. So it was like that all started to happen a few months later, and Tampa didn't feel the effects of the recession until like September or October of 2008. But yeah, so here I am. I really don't know how to sell anything. I'm brand new, in the market in Tampa. I mean, I've been in Tampa for a long time, but it's not the same, working in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So new to that, don't know how to sell anything. Recession hits. So I call 2008, 9, and 10 the scrappy years. Oh, and then I realized I was a woman in a male dominated industry and I'm 32 years old. And so I thought to myself, what have I done to myself? But in that moment of realizing that I was a woman in a male dominated industry, I thought I have to make this work. It has to work for that reason.
Hell
So
yeah.
that was
That's
my
great.
motivation.
Yeah, and we're kind of on the side of recession now, right? Like there's a lot of things that are common to what's going on in the macro environment right now that were then. And I'm sure
100%.
other folks are, kind of going through the same. Oof, well, that sounds a lot like me right now. Any tips for how you kind of weathered that recession and those obstacles that other folks can learn from?
I mean, I think I do have a suggestion on how to weather it. It's not what I did back then. Back then, I mean, it was really just me and my financial needs personally weren't huge. So I just kept being really scrappy, just going after it, doing whatever it would take in the moment to keep winning new business. And, I'm fanatic about delivering client excellence and a raving fans experience, which is kind of core to how we do what we do at CFO Alliance now today. So I think just being willing to do anything. I mean, there were times, Jim, when I was flying on a plane to Monroe, Louisiana to count paper inventory for collateral audits because it paid the bills. So whatever it took to continue to be able to move forward, that was my strategy at the time. Today, I'd say cash flow forecasting. So I'm fanatic about cash flow forecasting. And I've been hearing a lot of people say that all these expert economists aren't worried about a recession, but the yield curve was inverted a couple of weeks ago. It's kind of flat right now. Anytime the yield curve is inverted, I think we ought to all be really on notice. And I think that we could see, like, I know there's productivity and jobless claims are super low and employment and hiring is still extremely hard, but I think that can all change tomorrow, like literally. And so cash flow forecasting and making sure that you have a really good cash flow forecast, meaning like a perfect structure to a 13-week cash flow forecast, and then scenario planning and stress testing and being prepared with cash reserves and access to cash. You can't ever think about that too much in any growth economy, down economy, any economy.
So make sure you got enough cash in the bank and you've got the right financial help.
Right.
That's
And
going to be giving you the
banking
right advice.
partners, access to lines of credit, banking partners, access to reserves that you might not draw down today, but being mindful of where your working capital is going to come from if things change. significantly.
Well, that's an interesting one you bring up too, because oftentimes there's a discussion that we reach with founders around why debt can be a value add, right?
100%.
You mind just talking a little bit about that as it relates to both capital raising and just in general, why founders should consider debt as an option?
Yeah, because every founder has a really different mindset around debt.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a really conservative person, so I get wanting to have a clean balance sheet. In fact, we paid off all of our existing debt last year. We had some SBA loans and things, and so we were able to pay it all down. But I just was talking to our COO about, listen, let's stress test our own business model, and let's be talking to banks right now about what we want to do to make sure we've got the proper amount of capital and access to it. So I like to think about working capital even before debt, right? So a line of credit. A lot of founders even are resistant or hesitant to have a line of credit, but a line of credit is a really valuable way to have access to cash to fund things already on your balance sheet, like growth and receivables as you're growing. So it is collateralized by current assets. And so no one should really be intimidated by a line of credit. I'd argue most companies should have one. And then debt is a really useful tool because you can not be diluted, right? So having the right debt structure, but making sure you've got a finance partner or someone that you trust, helping you understand your overall balance sheet. And because there's important ratios, right? Your debt to equity ratio and looking at your fixed asset coverage charge. There's some easy ways to make sure that your ratios are in line so you're not over borrowing and under borrowing or under borrowing, and making sure that you're borrowing the amount of capital you need to either sustain a downturn or to be able to make the right investments, in an upcycle, or gosh, make the right investments in a recession. That's when really, really successful companies make amazing investments in a downturn.
Yeah. And whatever your balance sheet looks like, as you think about exit strategy too, right? And transactions. Any other thoughts as it relates to, founders preparing to exit, what that might look like in thinking about their balance sheet a little bit differently?
Well, gosh, I like to always say, just be like a Boy Scout, right? Always be ready as if a buyer's around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And my absolute favorite thing to do at the firm is when one of our clients gets an unexpected inbound interest or unexpected letter of intent, and they're ready because they're going to get an optimal outcome. So, founders that think about their business as an investment and treat it as such, and make sure they have all the financial discipline so that when a buyer comes, they're ready. Meaning you've got clean financials, you've got financials that you can produce really quickly, so that you could get to a buyer, be very responsive to their requests. It's all going to increase your purchase price if you're able to do that. From a balance sheet standpoint, I think about things like how a founder is structuring their personal compensation and how they're taking out distributions, and whether or not they've got debt versus bringing in investors, and what that means in terms of how they grow their overall valuation, how quickly they have to do that, how much risk they're taking on. So just evaluating all those factors and making sure they're being wise about what they're running through the business and not running through the business on a P&L standpoint. I know a lot of founders think about tax and trying to maximize their tax deductions, but that's a very short-term, short-sighted strategy. I mean, you should be optimizing your deductions at the same time while optimizing value creation. Mm-hmm. And those two things can coexist, but they're not mutually exclusive.
That's a great tip. Yeah. And compare that to what you're typically finding in a business that, oftentimes founders are worried about opening their books up, right? Someone's going to steal what I've got, or I don't want to look embarrassed because this is all on me at the end of the day, right? What tips can you give founders who might be going through that kind of psychological complex of, I can't let somebody else in my business? What advice can you give them on it's okay, like, we got you?
I guess, I've characteristically worked with two types of founders: those that are more controlling and command and control, and those who are more empowering, right? I think we both have worked with founders that, and I'm probably a little bit of both, probably more on the controlling side, actually. So I can talk about this a little bit, but founders that are empowering of their teams in general, their companies tend to grow faster because they are delegating and they're opening things, they're collaborative, they're trusting, and therefore you can have other great leaders that help, scale the company.
Mhm.
When it's command and control and there's concern about opening things up, then it's difficult to get the help and difficult to get traction. Um, but to put them at ease, I don't know. I mean, how people get comfortable, you got to trust the person you do it with. So that's first and foremost, right? Having a natural sense of trust, and building a trusting relationship. And that's what we focus on at the firm, is how do we establish trust with our clients and keep their confidence. It's really important. And it takes a lot of different skills. So making sure whoever your finance person is, whether they're internal, external, or whatever, that you've got a super high degree of trust.
Yeah, and also that you've got the different elements of finance taken care of, right? Because you might have a really great bookkeeper, a really great controller, or really great CFO, or someone else that you trust a lot, but there's different skills necessary for different types of finance functions, right? And I think that's something I see all the time is folks that might have a controller level person that's more of a CFO, or might have a bookkeeper level person that's more of a controller, that ultimately it's great to think about growing that person into that new line of duties, if you will, right? But at the same time, expecting them to be a CFO when they are not trained to be a CFO is tough. So, is that something that you see a lot, and any tip that you might be able to give folks that are looking at their business and thinking about, do I have the right finance help?
All the time. So I think this is what drives me every day, because it's extremely rare to find that one person that is like we call them a full stack person, right? They can think strategically like a CFO. They still roll up their sleeves. They can do all the things. They can start a new accounting system. They can enter journal entries. They love being in the data. In fact, we focus a lot on innovation at the firm, and we had a session a few years ago where they actually taught us that we've got 3 sections of our brain. Can't remember the names of them, but they can't operate at the same time. Like only one center. One of them is strategic, one of them is more tactical, and I forget the third. But like you literally can't function out of each of those sections of your brain concurrently. And so even to think about someone who has strategic capacities, but you need them to be tactical, they're still going to have to like shift into that other work stream. So even if they've got the talent, but it's really hard to find that raw talent. So what we find is that many founders try to build their accounting and finance organizations linearly, one person at a time, and it's just really hard for them. It's hard to lead them. It's hard to know how to grow them. They might have turnover. They might even have challenges with a person in the seat. So realizing that there's lots of options available to them for how they might even piecemeal a team together to get all the competencies and all the things they need in finance, just to open up their mindset that there's lots of ways to get that done.
Yeah, and you had some of your own opportunities that you had to work through over the last few years in bringing on other talent, that other seasonal executive talent that was the first time you kind of had to bring on, folks to entrust as a true executive team, right? Which is always an interesting time as a founder. I think you brought on a COO and a head of delivery, or chief delivery officer. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Man, it's something I wish I would have done sooner, like, right, being surrounded by the right leadership team. And people prodded me to do it for quite some time. But I just felt like, well, gosh, we're not that big of a firm. How could we really need a COO? And gulp, like, can I really afford that price tag? If you think about that new fixed, I don't know, I do, because I'm a conservative finance person. I think about the new fixed cost, and am I going to be able to scale, and get leverage on that new fixed cost? So if I wouldn't have been surrounded by so many great coaches and friends and supportive people who really made me do it, I don't know if I would have. And I'm super grateful that they led me. As we're a much better firm, much higher performing, overall scalable, all the things. That big ticket cost, right? I mean, it was an expensive cost to bring on the COO, and within 3 months we were already getting leverage, and it scaled us significantly. Just leveraging my time to go grow the firm, number one, and then number two, putting in all the processes and infrastructure, and then him being a great leader. I mean, the scale is exponential.
Sounds like you've got appreciation for others' gifts and scaling the team. That's great.
For sure. Feel fortunate to
Was
have a great.
that done from trial and error, or did you hit the nail on the head the first time?
I would say lots of trial and error. I think, I don't have, my skill set is not coaching people to success, right? So when there are people on the team that are naturally strong, that can run out of the gate, and I was their leader, they do well. But if it's people that most humans who need coaching and development, all the things, I really lack that skill set. So and my CDO, that is her gift, is really coaching, nurturing, and developing people. And so that's also been really important for our scale, because our team is more engaged. Our team is having longer tenure. And so we've always delivered great service, but to see now how engaged they are and our clients with each other is really magical. I had a lot of trial and error getting there as well. And even thinking about that additional fixed cost in the business, and having an appreciation for, because I'm so client centric, and having an appreciation for someone being so people centric, and how important both of those are to the total equation.
Any tip for folks that are might be going through that same, do I not?
Man, I would say, think about it strategically first before just thinking about the financial investment. Think about what the returns could be. Also, the support system that I had around me helped me craft a really rigorous process for evaluating the talent. So having a good process and making sure you're hiring the right person will provide some comfort. And surrounding yourself with other experts who can help you. Because if it's only your worldview, maybe you'll miss something. I know I do, because I got a lot of blind spots. But thinking first strategically about the return you're going to get, and then budgeting for it, and just feeling like you can breathe, right? You can see how the budget's going to work. You can scenario plan. If you don't get leverage right away, just feel comfortable with the financial investment, but knowing that there's going to be a strategic return.
Yeah. And that's, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And you also had another connecting piece that, that I want to hit on, which is, learning to say no to things that aren't strategically in your wheelhouse, or don't have some strategic value, that is often tempting to take on revenue projects, right? That will increase growth theoretically, but the outcome is oftentimes lack of focus and not, really nailing your niche, and niches are important. So, how did you start learning to say no, and really kind of nail your niche, which has allowed you to scale?
So necessity is the mother of invention, right? I mean, as a founder, I don't know if all founders feel this way, but any revenue seems like good revenue, especially in the early years, right? You talk about those scrappy years and flying on a plane to go count paper inventory. Any revenue seems like good revenue.
Yeah.
But in 2019, we tried to be a lot of things to a lot of people. We've served from well-funded startup to kind of 500 million private equity backed over the years, and we still do. But in 2019, we tried to scale like 4 different business segments. And we were only a $2 million company at the time. So to think about trying to scale 4 business segments at 2 million, I look back at it now, I'm like, well, that was goofy. It seemed like a smart idea at the time, but 2019 was just a really trying year. It was really hard. We didn't have focus. And so we ended up, I think we were break even that year, which was, kind of painful. We had some cash flow challenges, because even operating at break even, you run into cash flow stuff. And so it was really, we were exhausted, right? The team was exhausted. I was exhausted at the end of 2019. And Melissa Knox on my team, who I owe a whole bunch to, said, listen, we have been trying to do a lot this year, and we should really look at what's been working and not working. And we had 2 sessions. One was on who is our ideal client profile. let's talk about, we've been trying to do all these things, but really who is ideal? So we had like a 3-hour working session, and we wrote down all these qualitative characteristics, quantitative characters, all the things. And when we really dialed that in, there's like a set of 10 things that define who's ideal for us. And that was a game changer. I was tired enough at the end of 2019. I thought, this is it. Like, we got to focus on this niche. It's a special niche. I know we're great at this niche. I love this niche, like innovative founder-led companies who are on a growth journey. It's like, it really is why we exist. Some of the other stuff is fun, like serving big companies that are doing transformative work, also fun and actually really profitable, but we loved innovative founders. And so we just dialed it in. And in 2020, it was the first year we actually started saying no to some things. It's still hard for me, but we rate our opportunities now as whether they're ideal or kind of second tier or third tier. And we can either price them accordingly or find a partner who might be able to serve them, or just say no if we have to DQ them. And we're, we're about 2.5 times the size we were in 2019 as a result.
Oh, that's incredible. A lot of good knowledge there. One thing I hope you don't mind if I hit on that I think is really special about you, and I think is really special when founders realize they need it, is the connection to, number one, coaching and mentorship, and also number two, really getting in touch with their own spiritual self, their own psychology and spiritual nature of growth, personal growth, if you will, right? And I've been really kind of intrigued at the way that you've done some of that spiritual growth, that you've gotten really in touch with some of that and spiritual awareness, if you will. Would you mind just sharing with the group kind of how you got there, and any tips that you have for other folks who are, probably in need of a little bit of their own personal growth?
Yeah, absolutely. I can think of a couple inflection points. So for many years, even after those scrappy years, so kind of 2011 through 2015, we'd have some success, but then we would have some down times and up and down. I felt a little up and down. And I realized, I had a great coach at the time. He's like a CEO effectiveness coach and also a psychologist. And he really instilled in me, right? Like, the growth of a company is limited to growth of the founder, right? We set the tone, and you learn that, like, anything that's a failure in the firm or anything, it all comes back to you as a founder, like, in some way, shape, or form. It's our responsibility, right? So the only way is if every day I can look at the failures that we have and choose to work on myself first and become a better leader and influence the firm that way. So I spent a lot of time with that coach. I think 9 years I worked with him. And but what in 2017 was really the second inflection point. So 2017, we had like this perfect storm of 3 like really unfavorable circumstances. We had been growing a lot, hiring people, and 3 things all hit at once. And we had gone from being really profitable to where in like March 2017, we started a decline. And by July of 2017, we lost $100,000 that month. And we had just built this team. So I had just brought on, right? We've grown from 8 people to 17 people. And they're incredible people, right? So we worked really hard to get these people on the team. And then I think a lot of women founders especially tend to grow a little more slowly sometimes, because we think like we're responsible for the livelihoods of these people, right? So that means a lot to us. And so it wasn't even an option for me to think about letting anything go. And also we were implementing a brand new system. I forget about that. We were implementing a brand new system and spending like 50 grand on this system plus implementation. It wasn't going well. So like in July of 2017, it was the kind of month where you're waking up every night in the middle of the night, like not being able to sleep and you're sweating, right? And it was in that moment, again, I could either freak out or I had to find some way to have faith that this was all going to be okay, and that I was going to be able to retain these people. And so the only thing I knew to turn to, I'm not a real religious person. I believe in all religions. I literally love them all and can take things from any of them. But I'm not like dogmatic. And so I really turned to spirituality, and I was listening to a lot of Deepak Chopra at the time. And I found myself going to Barnes and Noble kind of once a week, and serendipitously just going to the spirituality section or the professional help section and letting a book choose me, or a couple of books choose me. And I just, for that year, from middle of 2017 and middle of 2018, I just couldn't consume enough of that kind of content. And it helps so much just in terms of shifting your mindset and giving you practical tools along with faith, right? I truly believe that everything happens for a reason and there are coincidences. And so even when there are things that seem negative, is just pausing for a moment and letting it pass and waiting to see what the thing actually is, because it's not necessarily all bad. It's just something you're supposed to experience in order to be able to get to what's next for you. So I'm a giant proponent of, I don't know, the universe, you could call it God, any number of things, but
Yeah, that's very special.
meditation. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah. And, innovation is in our blood. That's why we're here, right? But spirituality, I think, is something that so many people forget, that personal growth is probably half of building a really successful business. If the founder's not growing, there's a good chance that the business isn't growing and the team isn't growing.
100%.
So, on that same note of innovative founders, though, you've got a really cool campaign that's kickstarting this month, right? I think it's called the Innovative Founders Campaign. Am I right?
It is. Super excited about it.
Can you share with folks about that? Because I'm also super excited about that.
Yeah, we have amazing relationships with innovative founders in Tampa, and we've got some relationships outside of Florida. But in my experience, getting connected to founders, they don't really realize that what we do is an option for them. And many founders struggle to build their accounting and finance teams. It's kind of a painful area for a lot of founders.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to have the money to invest in it and invest in it in the right way. And so that's kind of the model we've built. But for us, we just want to develop relationships and build awareness in the founder community that they do have options on their journey. And so we've started to produce some content and collateral. I'm passionate about trying to deliver value in every interaction. So trying to build trust through an online relationship to start to broaden awareness that there are solutions available to founders. So we've launched some of that content, and then we are having an event here in Tampa. I'm super excited about next week. That'll be on the heels of some of that stuff that's already been published out there. So
awesome. Yeah. And I'm also super excited about the event and the campaign, and wish more people were doing stuff for innovative founders. And it's a really fun space to be in. You've dropped so much knowledge and so much dirt, right? You've got to the good, the bad, and the ugly about your story. And I appreciate you for sharing. And we typically close these off with a what I call the Founder 5, which is just a series of 5 rapid fire questions.
all right, let's do it.
All right. So number 1, the key metric or KPI that you're relentlessly focused on.
Run rate revenue growth.
Top tip for growth stage founders like yourself.
Oh gosh. Be balanced.
Love it. Favorite book? Oh, go ahead.
Be balanced in life. Yeah.
Oh yeah, even better. Favorite book or podcast that's helped you to grow?
Oh man, I would say 2. So Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and also the Top 7 Laws for Spiritual Success by Deepak Chopra.
Love it. What actress would play you in a movie?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. I've heard sometimes Kristen Wiig that I'm her doppelganger, so I don't know. Maybe
Nice.
Kristen Wiig.
No, she's hilarious. What is going to be the title of your autobiography?
Rebel with a Cause.
Oh man, yeah, nice. So thanks, Brooke. You've given so much to our audience today, and I always want to try to allow for a little bit of self-promotion at the end on how others might be able to help you now that you've given them so much. So how can they help you? How can they help CFO Alliance?
I love to connect with people, and build relationships. So if there's anyone that anyone thinks would be a good friend of me or the firm, I'd love to know them.
On that note, how can people get in touch with you if they do?
Let's see, they can email me. It's a little long. I don't know, maybe you can share with bevans@cfoallianceinc.com, or they can find us on our website, cfoallianceinc.com.
And we will definitely put that in the show notes as well. So thanks for sharing. This has been terrific, Brooke, and you have yourself a wonderful rest of your day.
Jim, thanks so much for inviting me on. You're an awesome host, and this was great. Thank you.